Hi, I'm Ashley, and today I'm showing you kind of a super sped up process of a commission painting that I did for one of my neighbors. She wanted navy blue and gold florals. And so I didn't capture the first part of this painting on video, but I decided to film the rest of it. And I started by just putting like blobs of blue paint down. And then I let that dry and layered on some darker values to create some detail, make it look like some of the petals are folded, and create kind of the different angles of the florals. And so I just work and build up those darks and those details little by little in layers. Now, the nice thing about a painting like this is you can bounce back and forth between the different flowers and let areas dry before kind of working on the next layer. So I didn't really have to use a heat tool here or anything to let it dry. I just worked on a different flower while the layers were drying. So I decided to go with sunflowers for the gold flowers and these like anemone type flowers, I guess, for the blues. And I used actually watercolor markers just on like printer paper to work out the composition that I liked and like what angle the flowers were going to be. So you see in the corner that like compositional sketches that I did first. You can't see the whole thing, but I did quite a few different varieties, and in a sketchbook I kind of worked out some different versions of the painting to show my client, and she chose which ones she liked the best, and then I ran with those. So same idea with the sunflowers here. I started just with basically like blobs of paint, and it's really loose to start with, and then we just build up the details as we go through this painting. So for the folded petals, it's helpful to create like a nice crisp edge where one side is shadowed and one side is lit, and that creates the illusion of that fold on the petals. And I did have like some loose circles placed, which you couldn't even see because they were so light, but loose circles placed where I was going to be placing the flowers. So I did erase those so that I didn't have pencil lines in the final painting. For the yellow flowers, as I'm adding layers, I'm not only making them a little bit darker, but I'm increasing the warmth and making that yellow lean a little bit more like goldy orange with adding some yellow ochre in and some orange tones to create the layers and the depth there for the yellow. Yellow for me is one of the like hardest colors to build depth with. I find that instead of keeping like a nice vivid bright color, when I try to build shadow colors, it just like dulls it down and grays it out. So making it warmer and darker in that way helps to create that transition between the kind of light yellow pale washes to the darker color, but also allows for like higher contrast. For the center of the blue flowers, I used kind of a mix of yellow and brown to create some variety and some depth into those centers. And then the sunflowers are really a nice dark brown center. And I tried to build up the darkest areas around the very edge and then like a ring in the center of the sunflowers. I looked at a bunch of pictures of sunflowers when I was creating this painting and like going through the kind of development stage, and they have like a very distinctive two like rings for the center. So I really wanted to capture that, especially on the front, like the full top down view flower. For the blue flowers, I add some really dark like dots around to look like the little stamen, and just to create more depth and detail. For the foliage, I went with a kind of neutral green, but it's pretty dark, but it's like muted. It's not a bright, vivid green. It's more natural looking. And I start by just creating the stems for my flowers. So I'm trying to keep them nice and thin right now. I'll build up the thickness later and some shadows, but just trying to get in the first indication of where those stems are and keeping them curved and loose and natural looking. I don't want them to be just like stick straight. I want them to have a little bit of a graceful curve. And then it's all like emanating from the center of the bottom of the page and working its way out. And then when I was going through the development and talking to my client, she wanted to add just a little bit of some browns into it. So I mix up a pale brown and just use that to create some like leafy sprig things. And it's pretty pale. It's not the focal point. I do add some depth and contrast in the values, but it's not detracting at all from the vivid yellows and blues. It's just kind of filler almost. And I really was happy with kind of the play of the colors in this painting once it's all done. I do add some splatters in. I like to add splatters because it gives like the illusion of having a little bit of a background without actually painting a background or filling in too much. And it also creates like a looseness, and it makes some of the, I'm not going to say errors, but some of the looseness of the flowers like match with the background a little bit more. So it's not like these super loose flowers with just a stark white background. It's loose flowers with a loose background as well. And at this point, I'm just, again, building up a little bit more depth into some of the buds and the flowers. And then I start adding in some leaves. And again, this is not the focal point. She didn't want too much greenery in the painting, but I felt that it just needed a little bit of leaves to make the flowers look a little bit more natural and to kind of fill up that stem space a little bit more. So I am using a flat wash brush. It's pretty long flat wash brush, and that allows me to create some really like geometric, fun, interesting shapes without looking like that like perfect leaf shape. I wanted them to be a little bit more jagged. Sunflower leaves have that like jagged edged to it, so I didn't want them to just be nice smooth leaves. So using the flat wash brush helped me create those shapes, and then adding in some shadows here also with that same brush just to create some folds. And that's pretty much it. So this was the first of two that I painted for my client, but that just gives you a little bit of a look at the process. Thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome day.